Hi everyone, it's Melissa, and today I wanted to share with you the best books that I read in the first half of the year. So these are all of the books that I gave 5 stars to from January to June. So that leaves me with 7 books to talk about today. I've decided not to rank them. I am just talking about these in the order in which I read them. So the first book that I read this year at all was the first book I gave 5 stars to, and that is Redshirts by John Scalzi. This book follows the lower or junior ranking officers, the ensign types, on a starship. And this book is playing with a lot of sci-fi tropes. It is just such a fun book. It's a comedy sci-fi, so I was expecting it to be funny and fun, but it surprised me in how much it made me care about the characters. I think it really makes you attach to them in a way where you are caring about what happens to them, that it's not just surface level plot, that you're invested in the story. And yeah, it was just a engaging, funny book with just the right amount of suspense thrown in there. The next book is Run Towards the Danger by Sarah Polley. Sarah Polley is a Canadian actor and director. She became best known as the lead on Road to Avonlea when she was a child. And this is a collection of essays, and she talks about a lot of different very pivotal moments in her life. She talks about child stardom and about abuse and neglect on film sets in relation to children, and kind of like the film industry in general, and how it is set up basically to exploit children. She talks about her experience with sexual assault and what that was like, especially considering the perpetrator was someone who was a kind of like darling in Canadian media. She talks about her experience with injury. She had a really bad concussion. And through all of these different experiences that she had, in the essays, she discusses her ways moving through those experiences, her lessons learned, and there's this theme of running towards the discomfort in order to heal, hence the title of the collection. I thought this was simply beautifully written, and she discusses these topics with a lot of nuance and with a lot of consideration, and really helped me see these different things from a lot of different perspectives. And I really appreciated that. And like I said, it was beautifully written. And I think the fact that I don't normally get along with essay collections shows you just how strong this one is. Although my next book is also technically an essay collection. It's 2 long essays, and that's The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin. Like I said, these are 2 long essays. One's, I think, quite a bit longer than the other, and they read almost like letters. The first one is written as a letter addressed to his nephew, and it is written on the 100th anniversary of emancipation. And in this letter, he's talking to his nephew, trying to guide him, give him advice almost for the future by giving him context for race and racism in America, and helping him see how that is going to manifest in his life, specifically as a Black man. The second essay is about religion and race, specifically about Christianity and Islam, and features Baldwin's experiences specifically. So he talks about growing up in Christianity as a very active member of the church and why he left the church, and also details a meeting that he had with the Nation of Islam's leader, Elijah Muhammad. And it was just so very interesting. I think the book is just very sharp and impactful and sadly still very relevant. The next book I gave 5 stars to is The Long Dark Tea Time of the Soul by Douglas Adams. This is the second of 2 books in the Dirk Gently series. The first book is Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency. In this book, we also follow the detective Dirk Gently, although this is much more a fantasy versus the first book being a sci-fi. So this book has a lot of just outrageous nonsense elements. It features some Greek gods. It begins with this very bizarre death / murder, and the mystery of finding out how this death happened because it seems kind of impossible. The mystery unravels in a very satisfying way. This book is, of course, hilarious. It's challenging to follow, but ultimately it is incredibly satisfying how it wraps up in the end. The next book I want to talk about is The Electric State by Simon Stalenhag. This is an illustrated book. The back of the book describes it as a narrative art book, which I think is a perfect way to describe this book to people, because it very much is about the art and the text supports the art rather than the other way around. The artwork feels very photographic and has this sad but almost nostalgic feeling to it. The book is set in this post-apocalyptic future, this post-war America with all of this decaying tech. And we follow this teen who is traveling across the western part of the United States, and we don't know her purpose at first, and you kind of see what's happening as the story goes on. Even though the text is very sparse, the story was completely engaging, and I was just blown away by this book. The next book I want to talk about is Wifedom, Mrs. Orwell's Invisible Life by Anna Funder. This is a book about George Orwell's wife and how she was little more than a footnote in his biographies. Not just in biographies written about him, but also in his own essays and his own written nonfiction work where he describes his own life experiences, and where she was, we know that she was present and played a much bigger role. She's also a footnote in that. So not only do more modern biographers erase her legacy, but her own husband erased her from his life. She's barely mentioned, and yet she was crucial to his success. There is no way we would have George Orwell's works without his wife. Absolutely no way. Not only did she support him domestically, making sure she took care of the life admin so that he could write, but she also helped him with his work directly. She edited his work. A lot of her ideas were used in his work. A lot of her and her thoughts are in his writing, but she's never acknowledged. And I thought this book was a really beautiful way to acknowledge her and her contribution to literature, and also provides an interesting way to re-examine his work without necessarily condemning it. It simply acted as a way to shift the focus and offer a broader perspective of George Orwell's written works. And the last book that I want to talk about is We Were Once a Family, A Story of Love, Death, and Child Removal in America by Roxanne Asgarian. This book explores the American child welfare system through one specific case where 6 children were killed by their adoptive mothers in a murder-suicide. They had driven their van with them and the children inside off of a cliff. This book dissects and critiques the child welfare system. It talks about how and why children are removed from their birth families. It talks about how racism and classism are a bedrock of the system, how children are often removed for neglect rather than abuse, and how that's basically just a synonym for poverty. In fact, these 6 children faced abuse after they were adopted. And despite reports to child welfare they were never removed from their adoptive parents' care. This book will absolutely break your heart, but it is such an important book, and it was also, you can tell, written with a great deal of care, and there was no way I was not giving it 5 stars. So those are my favorite books that I've read in the first half of the year. Please feel free to share your thoughts on any of these books if you've read them, or share with me what your favorite books of the first half of the year have been. I would love to have a chat with you. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and we'll chat soon. Take care.